Welcome and thank you to listening to, by the way, a contemporary art news podcast. My name is Eric. I'm an artist and art professional up here in Stockholm.
And my name is Ando, and I am a podcaster, an artist, and a time management consultant here in Copenhagen.
Wait, whose time are you managing?
My own, goddammit.
Well, yeah, for a few of the people, we haven't recorded in a while because we haven't had a lot of time. So,
Yeah, it's been fucked up. It's been so crazy.
uh,
But, hey, now it's Scandinavian summer. In about 2 weeks, everybody's going to throw down their shovels, and no one's going to work again until sometime in August. It's laissez-faire, the attitude.
today we're talking about 52 and they're all against you.
52 and they're all against me.
Well, maybe not you, but... All right, well, yeah, should we go ahead and get started?
Let's do it.
So I don't know how much you've been following the last month or so with art news, but this one came up 2 days ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Kickstarter campaign that's been launched by a Super Pac, a political Super Pac. Have you seen anything about that?
No, nothing. I mean, I know about Super Pacs, but I haven't seen any news.
Okay,
No.
well, yeah, so there's an artist-initiated Super Pac that launched a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign to raise about $3,000 for 50 states plus Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, i.e. the 52, to do kind of a get out the vote type of campaign for the 2018 midterm elections.
Mm-hmm.
But this Super PAC is actually an artist initiated project that started a few years ago in 2016. And so they actually are trying to bring contemporary art and make a political action with it across the whole country.
So is it in terms of, is it more leaning towards influencing policy, or is it more leaning towards here, look at some art?
They're trying, although I don't think it will probably turn out this way. I think it's a way to inject art into a little bit more the leading edge of what is going on in the culture, which obviously then is reflected in the politics and why people should go vote for whoever they want to vote for, but get out and vote to affect, change. For people that don't know anything about Super PACs, because I think about half of our audiences are not American, they're political action committees that are formed privately to raise money to support political campaigns, so it can be a politician or a particular issue. But normally a politician can't take so much money, but then a few $1,000s at best. But then a few years ago, the Supreme Court decided that you can set up this private entity that's separate from the campaign, that's not supported necessarily by the campaign, and then they can raise as much money as they want. I think, $68 million, I think, was what one Super PAC did a few years ago for Mitt Romney.
Yeah, I mean, they tend to be very, very, very powerful people. Form them to give tons of money into the political system.
Yeah, it's a backdoor. It's a loophole.
And to influence, it's not even a loophole. It's protected by the Supreme Court. It's a way to inject huge amounts of cash into political campaigns legally. And you can do it anonymously.
Yeah, and then the candidate actually doesn't even need to approve or stand for the issue necessarily.
Yeah, it's pretty heinous.
But why this is related more back to art is, so this Super PAC that was actually started by two artists, one Hank Willis Thomas and Eric Goldesman. And one of them I was familiar with, and his work is very political already. The other one, I'm not sure what the work Eric makes. It's kind of interesting to me because they want to essentially bring artists and contemporary artists to design these billboards that they're going to go in at least every state. If they raise enough money, they'll put in several. But then they also are going to be working with a lot of art institutions and museums.
I just like how it's a reasonable amount of money that they're trying to work with. So they're not trying to raise millions to do any sort of kind of direct political lobbying. They're just trying to raise a couple of grand per state to put up some billboards, essentially, and then I guess hire local artists, I can only assume.
Yes and no. So totally correct on the small funding. You know, they were kind of
But incorrect on the local
correct. Yeah,
artists.
so they were kind of inspired by the grassroots way of funding campaigns, the way like Bernie Sanders did. So
Hmm.
you know, where this actually, if it all gets funded and created, it will actually be considered the largest public art project ever in the U.S. And another
Yeah, interesting.
reason that it also will be so massive if done correctly is some major artists are going to be involved with it. Theaster Gates, Marilyn Minter, who is an amazing painter, the artist
Hmm.
Rashid Johnson, Sam Durant, who we talked about in episode number 2, who did the scaffolding system in Minneapolis for.
Hmm.
So if anybody wants to go hear more about his work, he's one of the artists that's already signed on, and already 200 institutions like museums and art organizations have already signed on to the project.
It's a huge amount of
It's a
organization.
massive project, but with a very low financial threshold.
Interesting.
But I'm just curious how they're going to keep. So they're trying to keep it a kind of more of a get out the vote and keep it non-political, for say in the sense like not supporting a certain candidate or a certain issue, but a lot of the artists that they are working with are.
We're not being against a certain candidate or party.
Yeah. So the way that I'm reading it, it's a very, very strong campaign against like Trump nationalism, populism, racial
Hmm.
equality. The only thing I didn't see it already addressing with some of the artists is like the Me Too movement, but I imagine that that will be a part of it as well.
Yeah.
What do you think about artists, contemporary artists that may or may not already work in the like this public sphere or with political action art uh,
Well, I mean,
working this way?
if we're talking about specifics, then I think that it all depends on how the project is executed,
Yeah.
right? So we can talk about this project and how well it's going to or not going to go. I think, to me, kind of the more interesting thing is not necessarily that it's politics, but that it's an attempt to bring art to a little bit more of a normal space inside
Hmm.
society. There's a billboard project in LA that has been going for a couple of years now, where they have an open call and you can, they just put up billboards made by artists, and that is a similar thought that it's nothing to do with politics. It has to do with visual public space and being able to present your art
Hmm.
that way. So I think it's interesting to fight against the elitization of art, and the keeping of art inside these museums slash safes. Um, so I think less in terms of politics. That's fine. Go ahead. You could also do it not politically, but it's more about like the public space and access to art. Of course, people driving down the freeway are going to have no idea who Sam Durant is. It's not, but they're going to make an attempt to try to bring it to the public in that sense.
Yeah, I think it. I kind of agree with you on that sentiment that it's great that they're bringing something out and taking some major artists that could have some influence at least within the art world to bring attention to it. But
Hmm.
I'm just now I've kind of rethought my thoughts from earlier now is if you're cruising down a highway and you see a billboard, can you really digest like contemporary art, which isn't always so
Hmm.
digestible, going,
Hmm.
60 down a highway, or when there's
Hmm.
enough other visual litter in like the urban landscape. I think it's a fun
Well,
project. It's something that I would love to do. I just don't know, like me personally, but I don't know how effective it is with communication.
Well, I mean, I think that art in a lot of cases tries to affect things that if they really wanted to, if you really truly cared about ending poverty, you could volunteer at a shelter or become a teacher, or there's a bunch of things you can do which will be more effective in my mind than making paintings about it.
You bringing that up actually reminds me of a story from about 2 weeks ago. Gerhard Richter, the uber famous German painter, he
Hmm.
is working with a housing group in Cologne, in Dusseldorf, where he's
Hmm.
actually going to make a series of prints and selling them off. The estimated value is supposed to be about, I think, 1.4, 1.5 million euros, and 100% of it is to go to fight homelessness in that little region. And so they're actually going to use it to build housing for homeless people.
So there you go. Cold cash. And that's his way of raising money. He could make prints which are supposed to affect public opinion through the viewing of them, and I think that's bullshit. I call bullshit on all of that. I think art can help people as a therapy. I think art can help people as an activity, something that gives meaning to life. I don't think it can solve, good example is homelessness. In that case, give them some money. Get social workers on the street, build shelters, change policy. That art is not going to hey man, I was going to vote for a party that tries to throw all the bums out in the cold, but then I saw this painting and decided, I'm going to vote for a liberal bleeding heart party.
Yeah, exactly. If you're already a Republican populist.
I don't really
What
buy
about
it.
now that I wasn't planning on going down this road, but this one is also something that Superflex a few years ago had an exhibition in Copenhagen, and did you see this one with the hospital bed? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if you know many of the details. So this art group called Superflex, they're incredibly popular right now. They just had a show at the Tate Modern. They did a project where they worked with Doctors Without Borders. They secured a hospital bed that they then took photographs of and made, I think, an edition of 3 photos of this bed, and then kind of an installation. And then inside the museum, you have the bed, one photograph. The reason that they did it all was that they were going to take this bed after the exhibition, send it to Syria, but then they used the photographs to fund the project, and then I think they donated almost all the money to some Syrian relief program as well.
But then again, that's more interesting. You're using an intersection of art and, in this case, humanitarian work to the actual artwork. You could argue it's the photographs, but in my mind, it is the hospital
Yeah,
bed,
I
right?
agree. It's the hospital bed,
And the photograph is a documentation of the artwork.
and it's a way to
You're
fund it.
using this artwork, which is not ever being offered to the public, which is never going to be, it's only an exhibition, and then it's going to serve a purpose, a specific purpose for which it was built. And then through the context of arts, you can sell some photographs for some ridiculous amount
To
of
fund
money
the project, actually.
to fund the whole thing. So that to me is a lot more interesting as an intersection where art can can have more agency in its actions. Had they made the hospital bed in order to prove a point about needing hospital beds and then sold it to a collector?
Yeah, so the hospital bed just goes to a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah, go ahead and fuck yourself. That's not, so I think that's a lot more interesting, again, than trying to make art that's supposed to influence public opinion towards good, but itself does not contribute anything.
I agree. So then how do we go back and critique this billboard project? Because I kind of now think, now that after we're talking, I think it's kind of a little shallow.
It might be fluffy. It might at the end of the day be fluffy, and that remains to be seen. You could say that in this case, if you can get enough media, here I'm going to eat my words. If you can get enough media and talk going about a project, it could maybe have a little bit of influence, but I think it would be pretty minimal. There wouldn't be a lot of direct on the ground influence.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will be, tongue-in-cheek jokes. Half of it will just be slogans. You didn't see any of this stuff, but a few of the billboards that they've done in the past that's not a part of this project, which actually were kind of humorous. There was one that was a play on Trump's words by grab 'em by the pussy, which was grab 'em by the ballots. So there was one about protecting your metadata. So I think it's just going to be full of slogans.
It seems to me like these sort of things are preaching to the choir to a certain degree. I don't think there's a Trump voter who's like, grab them by the ballots. You're right. I don't. Sorry to all the Southern people. I didn't mean to make you guys all out to be Trump voters. But you know what I mean? Like, as you know, we would appreciate those because they are in alignment with our beliefs.
Again, that's where I'm not really sure if this is like a great medium to first try and communicate a message of any sort other than just branding, like go buy the next Big Mac or something.
It highlights a bigger problem for me too. Sorry to
No, no.
interrupt, which is that in general, you know, you've got agency with art, but you've also got audience, you know, and when you try to, you know, there is the whole preaching to the choir. And there's the audience, and you're always taught as an artist to speak to an audience. And in this case, they're trying to influence opinion, but it sounds like if you're making a grab 'em by the ballot billboard, then you're still just, that's not going to change anybody's mind. That agency doesn't actually do anything. As great as that may be artistically or interesting, and as much as it might make me laugh.
Yeah, I think so. Theaster Gates is a part of one of the artists that's signed on, and he's a Chicago-based artist that has worked on the South Side of Chicago with a lot of emphasis in his projects on social issues. He is a African American artist, and I've visited his studio and a couple of his projects he's done, and his stuff when he works in the public sphere are very socially sensitive and engaging. I remember he did a what was it? I think it was called Black Cinema, where he bought a house across the street from his current house, or at that point his current house, and he essentially renovated it all to make it a local place for kids and in the community to go visit and see films by African Americans that was open essentially to the public all the time. So
see, that's fresh. That's fresh as fuck. Because again, that's affecting people. That's affecting change, which would not otherwise exist.
Yeah, and it serves a direct function. It's exposes people to a new message, new information.
And those kids are experiencing something they would not otherwise experience for the most part.
And these billboards, yeah, man, I started out this thinking that this was kind of a cool project, and the further I go down it, the more I'm feeling it's a little bit of like the all about my selfie, these Instagram culture.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the heart
cheap.
is in the right space. Yeah, and it maybe doesn't pass the meh test. Which is when you walk by something, can you shrug your shoulders and go meh and go on with your day? I mean, because when you're driving, you may also just you just got in an argument with someone. You're listening to talk radio. Your brain is not engaged with politics maybe at that moment. And there's a billboard, and you're like, who? And then that's it.
Yeah, it's also kind of funny that there was a study that a few years ago that came out that said most people in a museum only spend something like a half a second with any painting on the wall, regardless how big or how famous it is. That's like the average.
All right, and that's in the context of a museum.
That's somebody who spent some money or time to get there, and now you got somebody cruising down a highway trying to get to work, or like you said, that's listening to talk radio or has a kid screaming in the back seat, and they're gonna think that they're gonna convert some voter that's a purple voter to voting red or blue, in the future. Yeah. So,
well, I guess we talked this one down, huh?
Yeah, I was very optimistic when we started this.
Well, there's still space for that. There is still space for it to be excellent. And I still think in one way or another, since given the fact that this project is also very small in scope in terms of finances and etc., why not? Maybe we shouldn't hang so much importance on it.
I think importance is being added just because of the players in the project now. That the artists that
and the hyper inflated supercharged political situation right now too. So that means we live in an age where any action is highly politicized.
Do you have any final thoughts about this whole billboard project? Is it something that if you had $10 you'd throw at the Kickstarter campaign in, I guess, California?
No, I won't throw money at it, but I'm not gonna poo-poo it. But I will, I think we highlighted some interesting projects which are a little bit more effective for precipitating change. I tepidly support it.
Well, yeah, we've been actually getting a little bit of tepid support by people on the internet, which is kind of cool about the podcast. Yeah, in the last couple weeks, I think we've finally, not got over the hump. I think we're just now finally approaching the hill of success. We got
we found a hump.
We found a hump. Yeah, we got wrote up a few times, being listed as one of the better art podcasts out there. So that's kind of cool. If you go on our Facebook page or on our website, you can actually go check out what they said about us, as well as check out some of the other podcasts that are listed there. There's some other great podcasts on there. So.
Mm-hmm. And I would also say that now's a good chance for you to pop it onto your social media. Tell the people you know about the program, because you'll be the cool one who found the new shit. Do us that favor. Let's not hide this. It would be a favor you do to us, but please do. That would be a huge help.
And it's probably due to our listeners already that we at least popped up on a couple people of importance radar. So.
Oh, adorable! You guys are adorable.
Squish them, pinch their cheeks.
So. All right, let's stop this. This is crazy.
But yeah, so thanks guys for listening to this episode of By the Way. Go check out, our Facebook page, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, spread the word. Yep.
Keep your eye on culturalbandwidth.com. We're doing a lot of stuff. That's one of the reasons we've been podcasting less, is we're working on a bunch of new stuff for that.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll touch base again in a few weeks.